Welcome to More Than Words, a podcast about treating the whole child brought to you by the Reading and Language Learning Center. I'm your host, Tristan, and today I'm joined by stuttering specialist Lori Melnitsky to discuss stuttering and acceptance. Hi, how are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. We're excited you're here. So let's start off by having you introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do.
Okay, so my name is Lori Melnitsky. I've been a speech language pathologist for over 30 years, a long time, and I've specialized in stuttering for around 22 of those years.
Okay.
When I was young, I stuttered very severely, and I honestly never thought I would become a speech pathologist, no less a stuttering specialist. So you never know in life. I do direct all island speech and stuttering therapy. We are physically located in New York, but we do a lot of virtual telehealth now in many states. And we do work with children and adults.
Oh, very cool. Okay, so you said you're in New Jersey, right?
No, I'm physically in New York. We
Oh,
are
New York.
licensed though in New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania,
Oh, wow.
Florida, and California here also.
Okay, cool. Okay, so New York. Um, and I'll make sure to link your practice in the
Thank
show
you.
notes so people can find you guys. Yeah, of course. Um, so like you said before, you were like, I don't think I ever thought I'd be an SLP. So why did you decide to pursue that degree?
So it was really like a long journey. I actually became an accountant.
Oh, wow.
I was an accountant for 5 years. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I mean, I will say, honestly, I was stuttering pretty severely at that point. I was, having a hard time really communicating. I don't know if I chose it because I thought it was kind of hiding in a
Mm,
way. Um, and then I was like always involved in support and practice groups, especially for people who stutter. So I got like really, really interested in that. And I decided to go back for my master's. It was a long journey because when I went back for my master's, a lot of speech professors said I stuttered too much and it would never happen.
oh,
So it was, but I overcame that, and I have a
right.
huge need to really help others. I don't think I knew that when
Yeah.
I was young.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's really interesting. We had another person on the podcast who stutters, and so he said a similar thing where he was like, "Luckily, I had really great professors that were like helping me along my journey, and when I would stutter in some people's classes, they would say like you stutter too much, but in others they would like understand and didn't use it as like a stopping block. Um, so it's frustrating to hear that that's like kind of a common thing among professors, and I wish that they would like get over that in their brains. You know what I mean?
I think, yeah, I mean, I think stuttering's so misunderstood. I
Mm.
I forgot to mention I also run a Facebook group called Stuttering Demystified for
Oh,
speech pathologists also. And I taught on the university level for a while, and I think there's such a misunderstanding of stuttering, and you're right. I mean, I would hope that when we go and become, educated, that we really want to be encouraged and
right.
help others. I was very lucky that I had a close friend who stuttered also, who happened to be a speech pathologist. So
Yeah.
I didn't feel that alone. And I kind of always had this in me, like, this is what I wanted, and
Right.
you're not stopping me. So,
Yeah.
hopefully they follow me now and have learned.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So, but wait, hold on. I want to say I did transfer schools and I graduated from
Oh,
Hofstra, and Hofstra on Long Island actually encouraged me. So
okay.
the one where I got my master's like really, really helped me a lot.
Okay. Very good to hear. Well,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, So, do you want to tell us just a small bit about your personal experience with stuttering, other than college, maybe?
Um, yeah, so basically, I mean, do you want to hear like when I was younger
Sure.
and I
Yeah.
started? So yeah, I mean, I started stuttering like at the age of 4. My father stuttered also. So I kind of like became aware of it
Hmm.
early on. And I don't know, I knew like it wasn't an acceptable thing early
Hmm.
on. So I like always, I will say I was like always social and I always had friends and I worked since the age of 13.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I mean, I used to work in my father's store,
Yeah.
and he's a retired pharmacist, and I almost felt like I was always hiding because I blocked a lot. I mean, my vocal cords would block a lot.
Hmm.
So, I couldn't really accept that, and that's what I wanted to say. I mean, I couldn't accept that I stuttered because I wouldn't have been able to really communicate. And they didn't know that much about stuttering,
Hmm.
um, at that point. Um, so I didn't really, I mean, I really felt like it like held me back. I never ever asked a question in school, not even my master's. Um,
Wow.
so it wasn't until like my 20s where I just kept going for intensive therapy, but there were
Mm.
a lot of emotions behind it also.
Yeah.
So it definitely affected my ability to communicate. I like always felt like if I could stop stuttering tomorrow, everything in my life would change, which,
Hmm.
obviously as I got older, I realized there were other things. And then when I had kids, my older daughter started stuttering also.
Yeah.
So, and stopped.
Oh,
But,
wow.
yeah, she actually did. So, it definitely runs in my family.
Hmm.
And there is a lot of, stuttering's not really understood because to me, no matter what anyone says, I don't think stuttering is considered socially acceptable because, people don't understand it. So if you go
Right.
to a restaurant and you open up your mouth and no words come out, you're always dealing with the reactions of others.
Right. Which is frustrating and like shouldn't be the case, but it's just interesting. So you said um we obviously like don't necessarily understand stuttering as like a majority in the world, right? But do we know why like people stutter in general? Like it's kind of maybe like a scientific reason.
So this is like always a hard thing, and I'm just going to give a general no,
Okay.
but I'm going to say like we know there's some kind of mistiming in the brain. Um, from some MRIs, we know if you have a history in the family, you're more
Hmm.
at risk. We know if you start like after age 3.5, you're more at risk. I mean, a lot of kids go through what we call developmental stuttering and they're
Hmm.
repeating whole words. But to be honest, we don't know
Right.
the exact reason why. And it's like really hard knowing. I mean, but definitely the ones who have a history in the family, we sort of have to watch out for
Right.
more.
Yeah. And you said you went to therapy more in like your 20s, and I want to know what that therapy was like. And also, I know that you do acceptance therapy. So I want to know if they were the same or if you did different things and what they are.
So this is interesting. So I don't really do well. All right, I'll explain that. Yes and no.
Okay.
Because the only reason I'm saying this is because I think if people hear that, they're going to go online and Google
Okay.
to see what acceptance therapy is. And so when I started in my 20s, and I believe it then and I believe it now, that you need as an adult, for the most part, you need more intensive therapy.
Oh,
So when I
wow.
first, yeah, because you can't change how you speak in once each week. I
Right.
don't believe, I mean, that's fine with my teenagers, but it becomes much harder with adults. So I went for a 3-week intensive program away, and it was a very like mechanical program. It did not deal with the emotions of stuttering.
Mm-hmm.
So like I went to this program. It was down south. Everyone spoke like really slow, and I was with like maybe 8 other people who stutter.
Right.
And I was pretty fluent there. But I came back to New York and I just like crashed.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really, I still had the emotional aspect of it. I had never like really, this sounds kind of odd probably, but I had never like sat down with people and had like these formal conversations. Um, I almost didn't know the art of speaking, if that like makes sense, because I had
Yeah.
avoided it. So it was a little hard because I was still an accountant, and once you feel that feeling of fluency, I mean, it's
Right.
something I never really had before. And, everybody was like all excited for me. And then like a week or two later, I started crashing. So there were a few years there where I just couldn't get it back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so acceptance at that time wasn't like really a big thing. What I mean by acceptance is like you have to accept what, we all have to kind of accept what we have. But
Right.
what I say is you can accept it, but then you have to figure out if you want to work hard at it.
Yeah.
And I wasn't ready to give up. I mean, so I just kept like trying to find other things. I did finally find oh, woman, I can't mention her. Her name is Catherine Montgomery. She unfortunately passed away, but
Oh,
she happened to be like one of the only speech pathologists I knew who did not stutter, who really understood it.
okay.
And I kept at it. And it got like better and better. I would say like actually, I got over the emotional because I tried to, the more I would push myself out there to do public speaking, and I was a professor at a university, the more I pushed myself out there, the more I got over fears. And
Yeah.
I can say I definitely learned how to speak. I mean, I definitely, and I think it's what I teach everyone I know who stutters. I teach them how to like um say their sounds easier, how to
Right.
combine their words, but it's really really like hard work.
Yeah.
There's a big thing, the reason why I say this, there's a really big thing I find in the speech field, like people are telling other people like it is what it is, and you have to accept. And I find that very harmful, especially for young kids, because young kids have a chance, especially up to age 7 or 8, to possibly not stutter or eliminate it or
Mm-hmm.
make it like more mild. And
Right.
even at older ages, you can really learn how to manage it. So I think we just have to watch, because I don't think it's really our right to tell another person that they have to accept something that really bothers them, especially when there's help
Right.
there. So that's kind of where I am. So, I do speak to people about stuttering. We talk about the reactions. We actually run a monthly support and practice group every month for adults. But most of the people who come to me, they want to be more fluent. And I
Right.
think that's their right.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. So, what does a typical session look like for you guys in the clinic? Sorry if I assumed that you guys did acceptance therapy. What does that normally
Yeah.
look like?
No, I am actually happy you had asked me. And I think when I submitted the topic, I didn't know exactly. how to say it. So I'm so glad you asked me. So when well, it's very excuse me. Um, I mean, it's very different when you're dealing. I mean, young kids always have parents there.
Hmm.
Um, uh, Older teenagers, we do a lot online. We
Yeah.
do a lot of structured practice, and then we get into conversational speech. But
Okay.
for adults, I do a program called MPI, which is modified phonation intervals. And it really like reteaches you how to speak in a 3 week, well, 2 to 3 week intensive manner, 5 times each week, 2 hours every
Wow.
day. And then, I mean, I'm like, yeah, it is a lot, but when you start to feel that feeling of fluency, you want it even more.
Right.
And that's been like, really helpful that we can do it over telehealth now.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It,
That's amazing.
provides a lot more options. But I just think adults get very frustrated. Like I used to see adults once each week, and they would get very frustrated because it would take them so long to like
Hmm.
feel any kind of fluency. And then I usually, try and get them into real life situations, whether it's talking to family members, whether it's going out to a restaurant, whether it's calling places on this on the phone, which is not that easy anymore because nobody answers.
No.
So it's getting
It's
like
true.
harder. I'm like,
Yeah.
wait a minute. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So your adult sessions, it's interesting, like hearing how intensive the adult sessions are, because with us, we do a lot of things in speech, but we focus a lot on dyslexia. So our kids come in for intensive as well. It's much longer because, dyslexia is like you have to learn how to read is similar, but um, it's just interesting to hear that at the adult level, it also has to be just as intensive, and it totally makes sense. Um, so with your do you have kids that come in for speech as well, or for stuttering therapy?
Yeah. I mean, I would say 80% of them now are online.
Oh wow.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, it's a huge percent. I mean, I'm in the New York area. I think it's a big thing in our area. I personally find it works easier online because with kids, I need to spend time with parents and I need to explain what the program is. So it
Yeah.
gives me that time to explain it with them. I would say when you're under 8, the parent involvement is like number one. I
Yeah, that's what
mean,
I was gonna ask.
huge, 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 huge. And it's funny because my younger daughter, who's much older now, has dyslexia also,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's like I learned a lot with her also because certain things have to be done more intensively
Hmm.
because you can't like rewire things, you can't change things, just once each week. But the kids, up until 8, the parents, always come into the therapy session at the end, whether it's in person or online. And I always talk on my podcast, like I think in stuttering therapy, we forget about parents. It's like they worry. I mean, I'm a
Yeah.
mother and we worry. And our anxiety, if it's like not dealt with and we don't understand how to help, really impacts
Yeah.
everything. So I really try and include that. And most of the teenagers are like with me because they want it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they're really becoming like more motivated when they're in high school.
Yeah.
That's like, when it really hits.
Right. What ends up happening when the parents come in? What do you tell them? Like how to
Oh,
support their child?
I always, educate them on stuttering.
Yeah.
Like don't interrupt, allow for more time because there's a lot of rushing. I mean, I think our days are spent rushing from like school to after school. But if someone's having trouble speaking and we're rushing around, they're not going to have enough. These kids, adults, they're not going to have enough time to really express what they want, and it's going to make stuttering worse. Don't interrupt them. You know, be encouraging. I mean, sometimes you sort of have to educate. They have to like know how to educate relatives.
Yeah.
Who are commenting. Stop, wait. I mean, I really try. Once you get into like the middle school, high school years, it's a lot harder having parents there
Oh, I'm
because of
sure.
the age. So,
Yeah.
if I'm going to speak with them, I usually speak with them on their own. But I usually try and explain. I mean, if they're young, here are some things that will help them at home. I follow a program called Litcom. It's a very parent run program.
Okay.
And, the younger kids don't necessarily only have stuttering. I mean, I'm certified in prompt therapy also, oral motor stuff.
Right.
So, they're all, they're mispronouncing words. And I find a lot of younger kids, like, they might have like great vocabulary, but they don't know how to tell a story.
Right.
Um,
Which is so interesting. um, okay, so I think one of the things that really interests me is how you teach parents to then talk to relatives about stuttering. We just did a similar thing for parents of kids with dyslexia, like, relatives ask, and it's like the holidays. And so there are a lot of family members that might be coming around and all of that stuff. So this is kind of the perfect time for that discussion. So what do you end up telling parents? Like when you talk to their uncle, tell them XYZ.
So, I try and say like make it simple. I mean, I actually have tips, so I'll kind of
Oh, okay.
hand it to them. And but I usually say, because I think, I've like noticed this, like a relative will come over and say like, "Oh, I notice whatever, Anthony is stuttering a lot. Oh, I noticed they're stuttering more." And I always say, one, you have to set boundaries, because you don't necessarily go over and say, "Oh, I mean, you might, but say, "Oh, I noticed, Anthony got like really heavy." Um,
Right. Right.
so we don't. So I always say, you just have to, explain to parents, allow them some extra time to speak, but they are stuttering, and that is something they're doing. And we don't always have to like point out things that we know.
Right.
So, and of course, everyone has very different family dynamics.
Of course.
Um, but I think the most important thing is, just to try and let them finish. And I think like also it's kind of helpful if you're in a big like family gathering, see if you can get some one-on-one time. Because, if you're in a huge family gathering and, everyone's throwing in words here and there,
Right.
they're not going to have a minute to really speak. But a lot of, wait it out, establish eye contact, let them finish, don't comment,
Right.
just let them finish. Because the more people who stutter know that you're not going to interrupt, believe it or not,
Right.
they're not going to feel that time pressure. If they hear like slow down, take a breath, because it's a big thing. People say slow down, take a breath. But I don't know about you, but if like someone tells me like slow down and relax, it makes me like more nervous.
Yes, it
Yeah.
does. Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. So
Okay, so that's great advice. It is interesting, like you said, like you wouldn't go over to someone else's house and say, like, you wouldn't say something like that. So it's important to hear, like, you're allowed to remind people, like, hey, yeah, that is something that's happening, but just give them some more time, and you don't always have to bring everything up that you see.
exactly.
Right. Um, so I think our last thing that I have on here is, what should teachers know about their student who stutters? Maybe like something that the parents can tell them, or if there's something like you were saying with high school students, if they want to self advocate, what would you tell them to say to their teachers?
So, in school, especially, high school, I do encourage, I mean, it's interesting because I came from a time where you just kind of had to do where you, well, like nobody really advocated. So, I was kind of pushed in front of the class, and I think about it now. Was it helpful or not? So I do
Right.
encourage them, especially when they get into high school. If you're not comfortable speaking to them directly, I mean, I do encourage, parents not to do this unless they have to. I encourage them, send an email. Um,
Yes.
if participation really counts, then I would speak to the teacher about it. I
Right.
mean, sometimes if you're doing a presentation and, I mean, I don't think a lot of us, like, whether we stutter a lot, I don't think a lot of us learn public speaking skills.
No.
So, so, and especially when you stutter, but I don't think that's all. I think a lot of us don't know, public speaking. So,
Yeah.
I would definitely say, if you get that nervous, is there any way I can do the presentation with you and I alone?
Right.
You want to watch if they're really being penalized for
Right.
participation, because there are ways of getting like a 504 commendation. Um, I mean, I do encourage them to, you don't want to not do it.
Right.
So
Right.
so, but if the anxiety is like really, really high, send them an email. Hi, this is who I am. I'm in your class. I just want to tell you, and I'm not gonna, I want to tell you I stutter, and there's like, nothing wrong with even attaching a link from like the Stuttering Foundation of
Oh
America
yeah.
or the National Stuttering Association, um, or there's another organization, Friends Who Stutter. There's nothing wrong with, attaching some information, because I think
Right.
we all have to learn, and we all
Yeah.
have to educate, but you really don't want them being penalized if they can
Right.
participate. And I mean, I would get the parents involved if you like really, really have to. But I
Right.
just don't think it's good preparation as you're getting older to try and, advocate for
Mhm.
yourself more.
Yeah. And it's good to know. I forgot that that could be something that's on a 504 plan if absolutely necessary. Um, so it's a good reminder too, like if people are already in the works of getting, accommodations for a child, that could be on the list.
Yeah, I mean, I always hope though you shouldn't really have to have a 504. I mean, if you're speaking to someone and you say I'm like, having a hard time communicating, it
Right.
would be better if you like, had that relationship with the teachers. But if you need that legally behind you,
Right.
yeah,
The
it's
options there.
there.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, I think those are all my questions for you. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Um, yeah, I guess the only thing is that, there really is help for stuttering, and I really, really like could not communicate. And like I said, I think that, and I think also a lot of things in our lives happen developmentally.
Mhm.
Sometimes you're not ready. So, if you're doing something for stuttering and it's like not working, keep looking and always try and find someone who has some experience or a lot of experience
Yeah.
in stuttering. And there are only a small percentage of us, but we are out there.
Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. And thanks so much to everyone for listening. Make sure to leave us a little rating and review. It helps other folks find the podcast. And don't forget to subscribe. Have a great rest of your day.